But Stan, you forgot to talk about the Cowboys. I thought you were going to talk about the Cowboys. What's this deal? No Cowboys. Well, you're right. In the program yesterday, we ran out of time before I could talk about the Cowboys. And last weekend, there was a major news story which became somewhat controversial. And it was simply on this: what the world needs now, or what America needs now, what we need now, are more cowboys. Well, what do you think that means? And what's that all about? And does it mean something to you and your business? Well, we're finally going to do it. A little bit of a shortened version here on Hump Day, Wednesday afternoon, because I have to leave, and I'm going to talk to my friend who is a cowboy. And I'll tell you a little bit about that, and ask you to participate in a program for those of you who like cowboys. I'm Stan Houston. This is Radio Right Now, Radio on the Edge. This is the Jesus Entrepreneur Experience, and it begins right now. Yes, we are back. This is the Jesus Entrepreneur Experience. We are a somewhat daily radio on demand, internet radio on demand podcast. We usually come your way Monday through Thursday, Friday. Take a little bit of the weekend off, but this is our motto. Unless we have something that in 12 to 20 minutes will not be helpful to you, or if there's too much going on that might distract you, we just simply do what we should do: take down the noise level and have nothing more to say. But I thought this was kind of fun and kind of unusual, and perhaps it does show a little bit of the state of affairs. Now here I live in southern Arizona, in the southwestern part of the United States, and we're known for cactus. Boy, there's a lot of cactus out here in the desert. We're also known for cotton. The famous Pima cotton is grown not far from my home. We live near Pima County. And then we're known for copper. It is the copper state. And literally not far from where I live, there are still the remains of many of the old copper mines. Some of them are still going. Many of them, unfortunately, have now disbanded. And sometimes that is the basis for the legendary ghost towns, where simply towns that were based on an industry just kind of disappeared. And you can actually go on a little tour of ghost towns here in Arizona. Towns that just don't make it anymore because either the gold or the copper or whatever it was that sustained the little village is no longer there, and people just kind of left their situations and they went up and left. But we're also known as the land of cowboys, and right about 10 miles from where I live, some of the world's famous cowboy television shows, and then about 15 miles from where I live, many of the cowboy movies were created. Now we're going to introduce you to Russell True from the White Stallion Ranch, which is one of the more historic guest ranches, dude ranches, but it's a real ranch that you can go and visit, stay at, ride horses at, and kind of live like a cowboy. That's going to be coming up, as Russell's going to be a regular speaker and guest on our program, and he'll tell you about White Stallion Ranch. Then my friend David, Cowboy Dave as we call him, he's a gentleman who, of all things, has a doctorate degree. He is helping right now many of our veterans to find ways to get their life back together, many of them because of situations that took place in their life, oftentimes as a result of their service in war. But his real hobby is just exactly what he said: I love to sing the music of cowboy, gospel, and a little bit of country. Wow, what a combination. Cowboy, gospel, and country. And he'll be coming along soon to talk a little bit about that. But what this is all about is trying to help us enjoy the mindset of being an entrepreneur. In fact, together, Russell and I own a domain name which we might put together simply called the Cowboy Entrepreneur.com. Don't look for it. It's not done yet. In fact, it hasn't even started yet. But it's one of those entrepreneurial gestures and intentions that we're putting together because we want, in some ways, to bring together some of the best things about the culture and the ethos of the cowboy culture of the Old West, and yet bring it into some of the modern settings and see if literally what informed the 19th century could very much inform the 21st century, going on to the 22nd century. And things have changed so fast. I pointed out the other day to one of our friends that, remember, back in the 1960s, the classic Star Trek phenomenon that first of all was on television, then of course was on the film series and set. In effect, in Star Trek, the computers could talk. We were fascinated by that. And the doors could open by themselves. You just walked up to them and the doors opened. And we found that kind of amazing. My friends, supposedly Star Trek was set in the 25th century. That was the idea. Well, those things are already present-day realities 4 centuries earlier than even the designers and creators of Star Trek might have thought. Yep, our computers truly are robots that have artificial and, in some cases, increasing intelligence. They lack wisdom. Maybe they'll have that, but I doubt it. That's why we need people like you, Christian entrepreneurs. And then, of course, we need perhaps to understand that there is a spiritual and wisdom ethos that is timeless and eternal and goes back many, many centuries. And that's kind of what we do. The person of Jesus Christ will teach us how to live as 21st century entrepreneurs as he comes to teach us the principles of his own entrepreneurship many, many years ago. That's what we believe, and that's what we do. And I hope you'll take some time to think about that. There is an old radio guy here in Tucson, because Tucson literally was where many of the old westerns were filmed. John Wayne lived here regularly. Ronald Reagan was here in his western movie days. It literally was the place where many of the great western movies were filmed at Tucson Studios, even at White Stallion Ranch. Various films and movies were done there. Many of the legendary cowboys of the Saturday morning television series, they took place here in Tucson. And there's an old radio guy who's now passed on, but he was an expert in these things. And he oftentimes began with a little joke. He said, part of the problem is that when we stopped making movies and stopped making TV shows about cowboys and made them more about lawyers, that's the problem. We need less shows about lawyers and more cowboys. And someone has taken that to say, well, today we probably need less lawyers and more cowboys. That's what we're going to have some fun with this week. And yet again showed a little bit of the situation. What happened is the University of Wyoming this past weekend announced that one of their new marketing slogans had come out, and it was somewhat controversial, a little bit, to some people. What was controversial is they spent $500,000 for it, and it simply said this: Wyoming has its famous picture on its license plate of a bucking horse cowboy, and the University of Wyoming, the Cowboys. What we need now are more cowboys. And then there were some people that said, well, that's kind of sexist, or is that what we want? Are we glorifying guns and violence? So it was part of the rather noisy conversation that went on last weekend, obviously with the NATO summit and President Trump talking to the people in Europe, and then some of the blowback and blow up about the meeting with Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia. All of it might have gotten lost, but it was a fun episode to see as people were wondering, does the world need more cowboys? Well, first of all, let's make one thing very clear. A lot of the cowboy ethos is a bit of a myth, obviously created by the Western movies of the early part of this century. And we have to understand that being a cowboy was not necessarily a good thing. In fact, as it's pointed out in the story, in the Christmas story, there were shepherds abiding in their fields by night, sheep herders. And we all know the story is that wasn't really kind of a neat or good thing. That was kind of a rough and rugged life to be a sheep herder. Well, actually, that was what the cowboy was. With the cattle that were raised in the western Texas, a part of the United States, and then brought to market as the railroads were moving closer, how the cattle were taken care of, cultivated, and then brought to market. That was the job of the cowboy. And if ever there was a freelancer entrepreneur who simply lived from gig to gig, oftentimes living poorly, almost homeless, sleeping outside, and then hoping for the next gig that'll come along, wondering how he'll make a living until he can find another riding gig as a cowboy. In effect, in many ways, that mythical cowboy was an entrepreneur. Now, here's the fun part. I just want you to think about this. As you think about Roy Rogers, Dale Evans, Hopalong Cassidy, some of the heroes like the Lone Ranger, as you think about some of the cowboy characters and some of the great films like High Noon, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, some of those films, those many Western films, oftentimes the video that came out of those films, and then, of course, a whole series of 1950s and 1960s television programs. What is there about the cowboy ethos that might be helpful and useful for us? We're always looking for different metaphors. We obviously use war as a metaphor. I'm not so sure that's a good idea. We certainly use sports as a metaphor for things we do in business. Beat the competition, win for market share. So we use a lot of sports metaphors. We use a lot of war metaphors. Increasingly, I think it's better we're using dramatic or performance metaphors. But is there something about the cowboy metaphor that might be just fun? Well, here's what I'd like you to do. As Thomas Jefferson said, if you want something you've never had, you must do something you've never done. Think about that for a while. If you want something you've never had, you must do something you've never done. That is courage. And let me tell you, riding a horse fast, doing the things that cowboys did, required courage. It probably still does. There's the old story about my great-grandfather rode a horse, but he was afraid of a car. And my grandfather was afraid of a car, was okay with a car, but he was afraid of a train. And then he was not afraid of a train, but he was afraid of a plane. And I'm not afraid of a plane, but I'm afraid of a horse. You can put that in the combination you want. Here's what I'm asking. Could there be something about the cowboy metaphor that could be helpful for you and me as we're thinking how we can be entrepreneurs, have mindsets and leaders. People have attempted to do this. What can we learn from the ethos of the cowboy, the code of the West, using that as a metaphor that might better help us understand leadership as entrepreneurs, as true Christian entrepreneurs, Jesus-led entrepreneurs, men and women of faith, to be so bold, to ride for our brand, to take care of the animals, to take care of business, to be loyal. Are there things in the cowboy ethos that could help us? I want you to think about that. I'm Stan Houston. These are just a few minutes of Radio on the Edge. This is Radio Right Now, the Jesus Entrepreneur Experience. We'll be back with a closing assignment in just a moment. I look to the life of Jesus for many of the things. We're not talking about the religion or the faith or the tradition and all the things there. We're talking about being a Christian entrepreneur, and I'd very much like for you to be in contact with me. RadioEdge77@gmail.com, RadioEdge77@gmail.com. Please ask for my free ebook, which is called Fully Alive, the 7 Principles and Practices of the Christian Entrepreneur. I think you'll find it fascinating. I think you'll find it helpful and useful, and it's my gift to you. But here we go, and perhaps you can help me with the program. If you have any idea, what ways could we take the ethos and the legends of the cowboy and bring some ideas from that could better help us? First of all, just live our lives with good, perhaps good examples. Are there ways to strengthen our faith by the examples of how some people have lived? And right now, as a Jesus entrepreneur, are there things that we can use for teaching with a smile, a metaphorical way of thinking, a way of deciding this is something that's a principle and this is a practice that we might learn from expressing it in the language of the cowboy? Think about that. Have some fun with that. Think about that particularly in some of your staff meetings and organizational meetings. Get people to think about what it might be like to be a cowboy entrepreneur today. Ride for the brand. What is our ranch? What is our mission? How are we making it happen? TCENglobal.org is where we hang out. TCENglobal.org. Please check us out. RadioEdge77@gmail.com. RadioEdge77@gmail.com. Tell me, what can we learn from the Cowboys? All the best and blessings and happy trails to you, and bye for now.